I know that everything I'm going to talk about in this video is just going to fall on deaf ears. It's a vain hope that anything's going to change from this, but let's have a shot at it anyway. This is an appeal to any former Seahawks who played in the Super Bowl game at the end of the 2014 season, the loss against the New England Patriots. Please stop talking about it. Stop talking about it. I'm sick of hearing about it. This obsession that the players who played in that game have with the way that that game ended is a real concern for me. They just have never been able to sort of just move on with their lives. And they have to be able to move on. The Seahawks need to be able to move on. There's a real danger that this franchise is going to live in the past forever, because the players who played in that game, who are still very prominent in media appearances in Seattle and talking about it every time they're invited onto a podcast, they will never let it go. And look, I accept that it's really difficult when you have a loss like that was so crushing. It's difficult to move on. I can remember it took me probably 2 or 3 years as a fan to move on from that game and to stop second guessing it and overthinking it for just pretty much every day, especially when the NFL seasons were ongoing. So I can only imagine what it must be like for a player when you were that close and you put all of that effort and energy and put your body on the line to have a season end that way. I can only imagine how difficult that could be. But you just can't live with that moment forever. You never hear, I mean, I don't know, maybe you do, but you never really hear the players talking about the Super Bowl that they actually won. We never hear about that. The Seahawks, as a franchise, had one of the all-time great teams, one of the all-time elite defenses that have ever been created. They took on one of the most prolific offenses that the NFL has ever seen, courtesy of the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning, and absolutely hammered them in the Super Bowl in New York and won the first ever Super Bowl that this franchise has had. And we never hear anything about that. We never actually enjoy that. We never look back on that. We never really reflect on that. It's just an afterthought to this thing that happened 12 months later, when really the grand sum of everything is that the Seahawks lost a game right at the end in a game that they shouldn't have even been playing in the first place. If the Green Bay Packers finish their job against Seattle in the NFC Championship game, if they don't allow a strange, bizarre miracle to happen, the Seahawks never would have even played in that Super Bowl. It was a gift. It was almost like a free hit. And whenever you have a game of NFL football, there is always a chance that the big deciding moment is going to happen late on. If that Russell Wilson interception happens at the end of the first half when they were also going for it on the goal line and actually scored with a fade to the left corner of the end zone, if the interception happens there, it's just a mistake. If it happens at the start of the third quarter, it's just a mistake. You know, this is why the game is so great. Those mistakes can happen at any point, and it just so happens that Malcolm Butler interception, which was a great play, by the way, by the New England Patriots, and well done to them, it just so happened that it occurred in a moment where you had no chance to come back. But it was far from the only mistake the Seahawks made in that game. Defensively, they were terrible. Once they got into a 10-point lead, they had no answer to the Patriots. They only needed one stop. The Seahawks had opportunities when they had possession of the football as well, to drive the ball, to take up clock, to even just get a field goal or something, just to keep things ticking over after they got a commanding lead, and they couldn't do it. And to continuously hear the players obsess about this game, to go on about Russell Wilson, to go on about the play call, it just feels like the whole franchise is being smothered and almost like constricted, like by a boa constrictor, with this one play that is going to define everything forever. And we just need to be able to move on. Everybody needs to be able to move on. We need to look forwards. So when I see Luke Wilson appearing on KJ Wright and G. Scott's podcast, I've not watched it because I can't be bothered to listen to all this anymore, but it was all over social media. And he's talking about how Darrell Bevel had cooked up this plan to have Marshawn Lynch running the football from the fullback position. Why didn't they do that? Well, we've been over this a million times. We all know why they didn't run that play. Whether you agree with it or not, it did make some degree of sense to throw on that down, given the timeout situation, to throw on that play, and then you would have 2 more opportunities to try and score with the clock stopped. If it's either going to be a touchdown or an incomplete pass. When you're that close to the goal line, you would have 2 more opportunities to score with 2 timeouts. You could run the ball. All the play call options are on there. New England had gone for a heavy defensive formation. They've got the big guys on the field, so again, it made sense to throw. The decision to throw was never the issue. The type of throw was always the issue. Why couldn't they have had Russell Wilson, bootleg out and throw it? But even if you do that, there's always a chance that if the quarterback's on the run, that he makes another mistake there. That you could easily argue that was a high percentage play call, and New England just made the better play. As much as people don't really want to accept that, that's really what it is. And we obsess about it. We've got about now we're talking about why wasn't Marshawn Lynch in at fullback, as if in that exact moment, in the biggest game of the season, in the Super Bowl for crying out loud, when the clock's ticking away and everyone's wondering why is Bill Belichick not taking a timeout, and your head's scrambled as a play caller, as a head coach, as anybody who's in that situation, you're suddenly going to go, hey, stick Marshawn Lynch in at fullback, and you'd still be going up against the big guys there. And everyone forgets that Marshawn Lynch had plenty of opportunities in games during the season to try and run from the 1-yard line, and he didn't get in. So if that happens, they don't get in there and you burn a timeout, everyone's second-guessing that as well. So look, there's a million different things that could happen in an NFL game that lead to a situation like that, and it just didn't work out on this occasion. So we don't need to go over why Darrell Bevel talked about having Marshawn Lynch at fullback and it didn't work out. And then after that, so almost immediately we have that's the one, a 1-2 punch. Luke Wilson's talking about that. And then Doug Baldwin was on KJR and Softy, who I think's amazing, but he's tweeting this out saying this quote from Doug Baldwin, "We should have had 2 Super Bowls. All of you know that." And you know what? I'm sick of hearing about it, Doug. I am sick of hearing about it. And I don't get it. I don't get why this team that was so talented has allowed themselves to be consumed by this. And a fantastic team was built and was ready to be a dynasty and have years of success. And they tore themselves apart because people didn't like Russell Wilson's personality, or they didn't agree with the play call, or they came up with conspiracy theories about throwing the ball on the 1-yard line instead of letting Marshawn Lynch be the MVP. And they've gone on about this forever. And most of these players, if they're not careful, are going to just talk about this forever. And they're not going to be known as the team that won the franchise's first Super Bowl. They're going to be talking about the team that never shut up about this one. You guys won a Super Bowl. Come on, let's celebrate it. Let's talk about that. Otherwise, let's not live in the past. There's a new young team. This is a new era for the Seahawks with a new young team who we need to be talking about what the future holds. There aren't many other teams out there that constantly obsess about the Super Bowls they haven't won. The Chiefs, when they lost to the Buccaneers, got absolutely hammered, by the way. They just came back. They didn't fall out with each other, have a massive meltdown, and then not win another Super Bowl, then spend the rest of the time and the lives arguing about it. They came back stronger than ever, and they won another one. These new young players, and I think we as fans deserve to just be able to turn a freaking page on this and just move on. I don't need to hear Richard Sherman or KJ Wright or Doug Baldwin or Luke Wilson or anybody else talk about this again. Let's just move on. Let's move on. Let's move on with our lives. The Seahawks won a Super Bowl, and they were fantastic doing so. Let's cherish the memory of that and forget about the one where the Patriots made a great play, and that's what it is. There's a team that loses the Super Bowl every year. That year, the Seahawks lost the Super Bowl. It's a real shame that the guys on that team couldn't use that as motivation to come back even stronger the next year, because they had the talent to do it, and that could have been a great story, a great redemption story if they'd come back the next year and won one. And that could have been the legacy-defining thing, not the fact that Malcolm Butler made a great play on the goal line. But that's gone. That's ancient history now. It's coming up to a decade ago. It's time for us all to just move on. And as their song says, let it go. So please, can we just let it go? Former Seahawks players, celebrate the victory from the 2013 season, and let's just forget about what happened a year later. Please, let's not live in the past.